Motion by Mr. Buckley. May I have a second?
I second the motion.
Second by Mr. Bacon. Any questions or comments? All in favor? Aye. 5 yeas, 0 nays, motion carried. Consider the minutes of the September 8th, 2025 school board meeting. May I have a motion?
I make motion to accept the minutes.
Motion by Ms. Neese. May I have a second?
Second.
Second by Mr. Buckley. Any questions or comments? All in favor? Aye. 5 yeas, 0 nays, motion carried.
Next, we'll have Mr. Wilkerson present the 2026 school budget.
This was a real thriller that I read over the weekend.
Thank you. Good evening, everyone. Good evening, Madam President, Dr. Crimmins, members of the board. I just want to get started with some good news first. Because unfortunately, a lot of this is not going to be good news. So first off, the Calumet football team is 4-1 in its homecoming week. Second off, Calumet boys tennis team is 10-1, probably its best record in at least 25 years. So let's hear it for them. And then lastly, we are about 2 months away from having a completely renovated auditorium and a field house at Calumet High School. So this week, the seating at the auditorium should be complete, and by next week, all the bleachers at the high school gymnasium should be installed. So, that's it for the good news.
Okay.
So,
Moving right along.
so the rest of everything is sort of I'd like to say it's a mixed bag, but unfortunately there are a ton of challenges that are going to be found in the 2026 proposed budget. So the first slide here is just a reminder of the proposed budget calendar. This evening is the review of the proposed budget estimates, the capital projects fund plan and bus replacement plan. And then on Monday, October 13th, will be the public hearing on the proposed budget. And then on October 27th will be the adoption date of the 2026 budget in order to meet the state deadline of November 1st. So the next slide is just a reminder for the board and for those following along that the budget that we're going to talk about tonight concerns 4 major funds. Now, while this doesn't include everything that the school district spends money on, it is by and large the majority of it. And as far as what we're talking about to be approved, this is what we need to cover this evening. So first is the education fund. This is funded by the Indiana sales tax and is based on student enrollment. It is used to fund all of our academic achievement and student support. Its expenses are for direct classroom expenditures, instruction, and support. The next fund is the operations fund. Now that is funded through local property taxes, and that represents all overhead and non-operational and operational expenditures that used to be what was known as the general fund. So those are the things like your capital projects improvements, your transportation, bus replacement, and then salary benefits for the superintendent's office and the business office, as well as our custodians and maintenance, and things like our property insurance and our NIPSCO, our utilities. Next is the debt service fund, which is also funded by local property taxes. The debt service fund, it funds mainly our borrowing for things like the renovation projects and mainly that's, and also the common school fund loans, which were utilized back several years ago to purchase things like computers and things of that nature. And then lastly, if there is usually any cash left over, which there hasn't been the last couple of years, you can transfer money into a rainy day fund in order to leave some cash in reserve for future expenses. So the next slide is a history of our student enrollment, which is the main driver of the education fund and general grant. As you can tell, since 2019, enrollment has declined and then held steady from a high of 1720 in 2019 to around anywhere between the 1550 to 1650 range. In February of 2025, our daily enrollment was 1,547. For the purposes of this budget, I estimated conservatively at 1,545, but fortunately, and here's a little bit of good news, is that currently we are sitting at 1,575 students in enrollment. So that translates to approximately 263,000 extra general fund dollars. And then the next slide just sort of shows the revenue trend in the basic grant on the per student level. So in this budget season, each student enrolled is approximately $8,789. That's just general grant dollars. That doesn't include things like CTE or English learners. That's just the basic baseline of funding per student. And that funding comes whether or not the student is enrolled in the district boundaries or comes to us as an out-of-district transfer tuition student. And this just shows the annual revenue trend. That's in 2025, we will end with about 16.7 million in revenue. But if we were forecasting a dip in enrollments, we would have saw a slight decline in revenue to about 16.5 million. Now, again, that's just a sort of estimate. Things like enrollment and things like our CT, technical education classes, things like additional English learners could sway those numbers slightly. And then the next slide shows the proposed education fund budget for 2026. The total revenues based on student enrollment and things like the formative assessment grants, additional CTE funding, English learners, special education grants. The estimate for revenue in 2026 is $18.8 million. And then the budget for 2026 is proposed to be $14,804,246. Now, of course, you need to have a balanced budget, but the fact is that we did not fully budget the entire $18.8 million because of transfers to the operations fund. And, we've done that for several years because unfortunately the operations fund cannot fund itself for all of our operational needs. And that's mainly because of property tax cap circuit breaker, which we'll kind of go into as we talk about the operations fund. So all we sort of need to know for this slide is that the transfer amount in revenue from the education fund and operations fund will be approximately 21.3%, which exceeds the state recommended average of 15%. And that will be year number 6 that we've done that. So the next slide is the operations fund reminder that the operations fund was originally designed to fund 4 separate things from the old general fund. Our general overhead, our capital projects, capital improvement projects, things like fixing roofs, boilers, windows, etc. Our bus transportation, and then replacing buses as they leave the fleet. Now, since we don't really, we outsource our transportation, bus replacement is usually used as a as a shorthand for replacing Warrior wagons, because those are also on the bus replacement schedule. But as you can see in the proposed budget for 2026, there is no money budgeted for either capital projects or bus replacement. It all goes towards overhead and transportation. And then the next slide shows the proposed operations fund budget. So between property taxes and then other miscellaneous taxation revenue, like less license and excise taxes that you pay when you renew your license and registration, commercial vehicle excise tax, that's another $242,000. So all told, we will have and transfers $6,308,710 in revenue, and we will budget every bit of those dollars because the operations fund is stretched to the limit as far as necessary expenditure. And then the next slide just illustrates the main sources of expenditures in both the funds. You can see in the education fund that 85.9% of the education fund budget goes to salary and benefits of staff, whereas 14% are things like supplies, some small support, books, things of that nature, technology repairs as well. And then the operations fund, you can see sort of the reverse, that 82.4% is on other expenditures, whereas 17.6% is on salary and benefits. So the 82.4% of expenditure in the operations fund is composed primarily of our outsourced transportation and our maintenance and facilities expenditures. Next is the rainy day fund. Right now, the rainy day fund, we have not funded any revenue into that for at least 3 or 4 years. Unfortunately, that we're going to continue that trend this year. We will budget $1.8 million, and that is primarily in transfers to supplement primarily the operations fund, because as we'll sort of go through the budgets. Because of circuit breaker loss, we will not realize all the revenue that I just kind of talked about in the previous slide. Yes, sir, Dave. Mr. Bacon. Sorry.
For the operations fund, it's budgeted, 6.3, and the revenue is 6.3, but $5 million of that is from education and rainy fund, so it's really about $1.5 million or so.
Yes. So as far as, again, the revenue realized into the operations fund will essentially be about $1.3 million if everything operates perfectly. So in other words, you receive every bit of your property tax revenue, which never ever happens because not everyone pays their property taxes. So the next slide is on the debt service fund. The debt service fund, again, is essentially where we use property tax revenue to pay on our long-term debt, which right now consists of the 2022 bond issue that's paying for the renovation of the Fieldhouse Auditorium and also finishing the HVAC improvements that we started during COVID at the high school. As well as also the 2016 bond issue that paid for the renovation of the outdoor sports complex. Those are the two biggest debt payments that the debt service fund funds. But then also there are several smaller common school loans that over the years were funded things like technology purchases back several years ago. Now, as debt falls off, we can re-examine how and I'll kind of go through this as I sort of do my summation, that as our debt service falls off, there is capacity to borrow some money to fund things like capital projects or technology purchases or things like that. But the capacity for that is so limited because of property tax circuit breaker. And unfortunately, because of the Senate Bill 1, which, policy analytics is, sort of, explained to everyone at length, the constriction becomes even tighter on the district because the property tax revenue that we're going to realize is just going to keep shrinking. So at least in this budget year, the total debt service budget is $3,882,534. So due to the property tax caps, all property tax levied minus the circuit breaker will cover our debt service funds first because that's state law. You have to pay your debt first. So we have to cover our $3.8 million in debt. So in 2025, we certified a total levy of $8,274,901. Now, 2026, the estimated circuit breaker is $3.4 million if the property values remain constant, which would leave us only about $992,000 for operations after all of our debt is paid. Now, and then, we still have a bit of cash left in the operations fund. That's where you would have about $1.2 million in total, revenue before transfers. Now, fortunately, assessed property values in the district, the net assessed values grew another 9.5% last year. So that provides some additional circuit breaker relief. So usually, for instance, if the estimate is $3.4 million, and you continue to see some net assessed value growth, the actual circuit breaker value would be somewhere along the lines of below $3 million. So we might see some relief in circuit breaker next year.
I got a question.
Sure.
What kind of large maintenance items do you predict coming in the future, like parking lots, or are there any little heavy hitters coming?
Well, and that's an excellent question because I think the project that we designed this time was a real heavy hitter. That it was to sort of do the main needs for the district, because the auditorium was unusable, because the gym floor was bordering on unusable. So that that was able to attack our main, glaring need. Now the problem is that we have, four buildings that are in varying, vintages. I mean, this building was, post World War II. Longfellow 1960s. Middle school, late 60s. So there are always, little things that are going to come up. Windows, roof maintenance. So what we're going to need to do as we go forward as a district is, I think, it would behoove us to do a long-term capital planning plan to sort of map out for the next 5, 10, 15 years what our more pressing needs are going to be for those little projects here and there, and then design our borrowing or what capacity for borrowing we'll have to pay for those kind of projects. Because as the debt the debt falls off at a real slow rate. Now, for instance, we have a couple of common school loans that are going to fall off next year. Another 3 that are going to fall off in 2030. Another couple in 2031. The real big, ticket items, the football field and this current project, that's 2035 for the football field and 2042 for the field house and auditorium. So, it's typical, borrowing, you're not going to be able to do a big project, in the near future, but I think, there is a way to attack some of those smaller projects that we talked about, the windows, the parking lots, things like that. Excuse me. The next slide, short, shows the estimated tax rates, or the proposed tax rate for for 2026 and the history of tax rates in the district prior to that. So as you can kind of see, based on the assessed value, or your debt capacity, the rates would go up, down, and then there we go. Okay. So for instance, you can kind of see that up until the last probably 4 years, the district hovered in the about $250 million range of assessed value. And so consequently, based on your debt load or whatnot, the district was going between $2.40 up to $3.08 as the circuit breaker impact kicked in. Had some debt fall off in 2020 and 21, got down to 263. Then we had we borrowed on the 2022 for the Fieldhouse and Auditorium, so it jumped back up to 277. Now the good news is that as assessed value increases, the rate drops. So you can kind of see that as 2023, the rate was $2.95. It dropped to 269 in 24, 262 in 2025, as the assessed value kind of climbed into over $300 million. Now in 2026, the net assessed value is $347 million. That's based on what we are permitted to borrow through the maximum levy in both our debt service and operations fund. The proposed tax rate will be around $2.34. Now, that may sound great, at least in this district, because $2.34 is probably the lowest it's been in quite a while. But unfortunately, it is still one of the highest in the state of Indiana. Compared to other districts where, because of higher property values, you're talking about less than $1. 60 cents, 80 cents. Some districts even smaller. So in order to generate the levy that we can, this is the tax rate that we'll need to approve. Now the DLGF may knock it down even a few more cents based on what they feel is will generate the maximum levy, but I'm fairly confident that 234 is probably in the ballpark of where they'll settle. And that's because again, and this is just a summary of the proposed numbers and revenues, and that's the comparison to the rates, the advertised and actual rates of last year and this year. So the last slide, and then I'll sort of provide a summary. So the last slide shows that the Department of Local Government and Finance said that we can levy for $4,266,429. And then, as I kind of told you, our debt service is about $3.8 million. So that is $8.1 million in total levy. Now, unfortunately, they've also projected a circuit breaker loss of $3.4 million. Now, it may be smaller because of the assessed value growth, but we're not going to count on that. And in fact, it may grow because again, there is the possibility of the property tax credits that were generated in Senate Bill 1 might be higher than the DLGF even estimated in this $3.4 million. So as a result, again, we're left with about $1,348,963 in available property tax for the operations fund. That is $4.9 million short of what we need, budget-wise. So again, what does that mean? So operations costs will have to come from either our cash balance or rainy day fund, or additional operation revenue will have to come from the education fund. And we're already transferring $4 million a year from the education fund to the operations fund. So, right now, 4 million has been, sort of the status quo number for the last 5 years. But I'm here to tell you that as I'll just say it, as the news tightens, the property tax funds are going to dry up. And so, for instance, the last presentation that, we saw from policy analytics and everything that's come from legislative service agencies is that the, Lake Ridge Operations Fund property tax, levy will be totally eaten up by credits by 2028. So that means that, right now, we can generate about $1.3 million in operations fund, from property taxes. By 2028, that number is 0. And so at the end of the day, you're not going to have any money for buses. You're not going to have any money to, keep the lights on. You're not going to have any money to, do any sort of, improvements. If, the window breaks, the roof caves in, you're not going to have anything that doesn't come from your general fund or your education fund. And every dollar that comes from the education fund is a dollar that's not being spent in the classroom. I mean, and, I've said this in several budgets before, I've never quite understood, the sort of the dichotomy between education and operations, because every dollar we spend here is in furtherance of educating the child. I mean, you have to have lights. You have to have, buses, because again, if we don't have buses, then, a large portion of the enrollment increase that we've seen over the last, several years is from out of district students who, we've been able to, accommodate if they stop, at the edge of the district, and we can kind of bus them in. So again, that sort of leaves us, and I kind of talked with it, during my, executive summary, that, we've had challenges over the last several years. I mean, it's gotten even more pronounced with, in the name of property tax reform. And it's a property tax reform that didn't reform it. It provides, it saves up the average home, it's going to save a homeowner about, maybe $300 a year in property taxes. And again, it's going to cost this district, up to 1.2 million additional, dollars by 2020. And so, I do not envy the board in its position for what's going to come next. I know that, we've, as a leadership team, have sort of started to examine what we're going to need to do to, tighten our belts as far as, we've, looked at our vendor contracts, look at our insurance contracts, look at, our staffing levels, everything is on the table. But even then, if you can sort of, say in an ideal world, you find, $1 million in savings, that still leaves you a good, $1.5 million, $2 million short. And so that's going to have to come somewhere. And so that's either going to have to, either the state is going to have to revisit what they do for funding, or, I know this is not the most popular word to hear, but we're going to have to probably go for a referendum, because we are on the precipice of, running out of money, probably as soon as 2027. If not, and depending on the way that the pendulum swings, it could be the end of 2026. And then, but I don't think so, because again, I'll try to end it on a, halfway optimistic note, that we have a good leadership team here that's, sort of recognizes that, anything worth doing is going to be difficult, but, I think we have, like I said, a group of people that believed in Lake Ridge. A lot of us grew up here. A lot of us, don't want to see it, go away. But again, I can't sugarcoat it. I'm sorry. I wish I could. So again, that's my proposed budget for 2026. The board will, give the proposed rates at the next meeting, and then we'll approve it on the 27th. Assuming that there are no objections to the budget is proposed. Thank you for your time, your attention, and for listening to all this good news. Do you folks have any questions?
They already know. This isn't my first budget session. If it was my first budget session, I'd be like, holy cow, what does all that mean? But thank you, Adrian, for presenting that with us. No? Thank you for your presentation,
Thank you.
Mr. Wilkerson. Okay, now we're gonna move on to superintendent report. Dr. Crimmins.
Goal area 1 academics, all learners will continuously demonstrate academic growth. Safety will provide a safe and secure learning environment for all. Equity, we will provide a positive, inclusive, and equitable environment for all. Communication, we will improve communication and strengthen relationships internally and externally. Finances, we will advocate to increase the financial resources of the corporation to provide an outstanding school environment and opportunities for our students and staff. And as far as my report, I have a few things to report on. The staffing study is underway. They're getting information back this Friday. The team will be here to start interviewing some key positions, and then they will be back next week also, looking at a variety of different staffing things. As Adrian said, there's lots of things we're looking at. Adam Kurtz is looking at a lot of them. We're studying the health insurance costs. They are out of hand. We have another meeting with a consultant Wednesday to look at some options. Looking at the clinic costs and the return or lack of return on the clinic that we operate. We did start the Neola updates today, and I know my goal is to have that ready for you for first reading in November so you can pass it in December, so it's up to date for the new superintendent. The TAG grant came out a couple weeks ago. We're still trying to figure out what that means. There's another online meeting tomorrow. I do anticipate we will turn in that we're going to apply for it. Conventional wisdom from Indianapolis is if you turn it down, that's not a good look. But a lot of schools are probably going to do something similar. We just don't know what that similar is right now. Homecoming weeks this week. I know there's a lot of activities. I encourage you to get involved with them. And parade Wednesday evening. And just a reminder, you still need to decide officially, but we're talking about going on a test basis to one regular board meeting a month, which what we could do if we do that in October. There's going to be another meeting on the 27th to approve the budget, so you could always gradually break into that. It might be a good time on the 27th for you to finalize your game plan for interviews that start the next night too. But that probably needs to be added on. If you guys want to try one board meeting a month, you need to vote on that and approve it tonight. And that's my report.
Thank you, Dr. Crimmins.
Professional development.
I'd like to recommend approval of the listed professional development as presented.
May I have a motion?
I make the motion to accept.
Motion by Ms. Hughes. May I have a second? Second by Mr. Buckley. Any questions or comments? All in favor? Aye. 5 yeas, 0 nays. Motion carried. Okay, we'll use resignation and employment, Dr. Kerman.
Okay, you have the list there, the one was added, it started. 8 positions
Right.
created. I recommend approval of these leave resignation employment items as presented.
May I have a motion?
Make a motion.
Motion by Ms. Neese, may I have a second? Second by Mr. Deal. Any questions or comments? All in favor? Aye. Motion carried. Next, new business.
Okay, do you want to do these in group?
We can do it as a whole.
Okay, I recommend approval of these recommendations of new business items.
Okay, may I have a motion to recommend approval of the new business items? The chair will make a motion. May I have a second? Second by Ms. Neese. Any questions or comments? All in favor? Aye. All in favor? Aye. 5 yeas, 0 nays, motion carried. Now we're gonna move on to our closing comments. Mr. Buckley.
Thank everyone for coming out tonight. For the budget presentation. We've been looking at this for a while, so there's not a shock to you what's coming. And we're doing everything we can to improve it. It'll be a long road and we do not have much time. So working on it, and there needs to be definitely very much a sense of urgency on all the things that are in front of us. We cannot drag our feet on decisions that we're making. The superintendent search is going well, and we look forward to interviewing next week. So I thank you all for coming out tonight, and have a good evening.
Okay.
Okay.
Yes.
Yeah, perfection is coming. Okay, Mr. Bacon.
Just want to thank everybody for coming. Thank Adrian for the information. I'm still learning to, read the finances and how I can finance, so bear with me on that. We were a little hesitant on voting on some actions today because you don't want to say what's been going on forever, where just bad money after bad money. You want to actually be accountable. So I just want the community to know that we are looking at that. We're nothing status quo anymore. And if it's moving forward, we make the best decisions we can. And we look forward to all the homecoming events. I hope I can make, at least several of them. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Bacon. Ms. Neese. Yeah, I did it wrong.
Glad to see people in the audience today. Glad it's homecoming week. I hope it turns out very nicely with our parade and the homecoming game, and hope a lot of people come out. Want to also agree with what we're all talking about. This board is really looking at a lot of things all at one time. I tend to, but I just want the community to know that we're going to do our best to do the best for our community. We don't want to see Lakewood schools by the wayside. It's been around for a long time, and we like to see it known. I think the state is really trying to push public schools out of the racial or whatever, but we're going to go down side. Hope we can do the best we can, and I hope the community appreciates what we're trying to do.
Thank you, Ms. Thank you, Ms. Mead. Mr. Deal.
Been here for a while. I was on vacation, and the day I intended to come back, transmission decided it was gonna crap out in my truck, so I sat there for another 2 weeks. But we made it back last Thursday, so glad to be back. This has been mentioned by a lot of people. We're doing everything we can to try to keep Lake Ridge schools on the map in business. As a student, an employee, and as a school board member, I've been part of this district since 1953. There's no reason for it to fall by the wayside because some people don't think that public schools have a place in the universe anymore. I totally disagree with them. I'm a product of public schools. My 4 kids were products of this public school. Now I've got great grandkids that are products of this school. We need to be in this community. There's no doubt about it. One other thing that just bugs me to death in light of the senseless murder in Utah 2 weeks ago. What has happened to the people in this country that we can no longer talk if we disagree with somebody? We immediately think we gotta do something totally crazy. I don't agree with it. I don't agree with a lot of things going on in this country. If we would just sit down and talk to one another, a whole lot of this stuff could be done away with. And with that, thank you all for coming. God bless each and every one.
Thank you, Mr. Deal.
Mr. Wilkerson.
Thank you, Madam President. So I just, first off, want to thank everyone for their time and coming out tonight to, listen to me spin, this, tale. The theme that I picked for the budget, I try to pick a theme every year, and mine this year obviously was challenge. And so I just want to share a quote that I was particularly struck by, is that we all have challenges. And, we have to face them, embrace them, defy them, conquer them. Lake Ridge, Calumet Township, Black Oak, we've always been the underdog. We've always been, kind of in between, counted out, counted down, that, but it's, everyone loves an underdog story. And, I think that, again, I think we can embrace these challenges and hopefully defy them and conquer. Best of luck to the football team this week for homecoming. It's always nice to see everyone come out to support the team. Come to the parade on Wednesday, movie night on Thursday. So game on Friday, and so. Just thank you, everyone, and enjoy this early fall weather.
Thank you, Mr. Wilkerson. Mrs. Trevino.
Thank you, everyone, for being here tonight. Thank you guys for coming. We even have some teachers in the audience tonight. Adrian, thank you for your presentation. As always, it was very informative. And back, yes, we have the Powder Puff game on Wednesday, and the parade, and movie night, homecoming game. We also have College Go Week going at Longfellow this week. And we also have Grandparents' Day on Thursday at Longfellow this week. I also wanted to give my condolences, and our condolences to Sherry Alford's family. She passed away last week, and I know some people probably don't know who Mrs. Alford is, but she was a longtime elementary teacher in our district. I believe for almost 40 years, was the union president for a very long time. And so our condolences go to her family. And I just want to say that this will be a busy week, but it'll be a lot of fun. So we look forward to seeing everybody in the community this week. Thank you.
Thank you, Mrs. Scrivener. Dr. Crimmins.
Only thing I have that, there's gonna be a lot of challenges. Keep in mind, our main business is educating kids. There's gonna be some decisions, some people aren't gonna like. Some decisions nobody's gonna like, but yet our business is, that's what it is.
Thank you, Dr. Crimmins. And all I really want to say is to our community members, if you're a parent or a guardian, please, 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 I implore you, check your student's technology to make sure that it is not damaged. Make sure that they are not damaging it year after year. Sometimes, a lot of times, we have needless damage, needless loss, and I am sick and tired of Lake Ridge picking up the tab for people not taking care of their devices. Moving forward, there will be a plan in place to get collections. We have many repeat offenders, and I'm flabbergasted by the loss that we face year after year because people do not know how to properly take care of things. We all need to do better. Now I'm going to go to a positive note. I am excited about homecoming. I am going to be able to make it to a game on Friday. I won't be able to make it to the parade. I'm working. I hope to make it to the game. And as Ms. Lee stated, we are unified as a board. We are stronger than we've ever been. And we are going to do the best that we can to unify this community and make the best decision that we can moving forward for our superintendent. Mr. Wilkerson, thank you for your presentation. Thank you all for being here. Thank the teachers for being here especially. I know everybody's had a really long day. And with that, I just need a motion to adjourn. Motion by Mr. Buckley. May I have a second? Second by Ms. Neese. This meeting is adjourned. Thank you.